When it comes to horse racing, you can never have too much information. With twinspires, you can place your bets with confidence, whether you use handicapping insights like our Brisnet speed ratings, prime power and past performances, the guidance of our experts' top picks, or just choose a name that catches your eye. Yes! No matter how you pick your horse, bet with twinspires. And now you can race to victory with twinspires tournaments.
Well, very pleasant good afternoon to all of you. Take two on the twinspires Racing Roundtable for this week. Nick Tamaro here, deputizing for Ashley Anderson, hosting this week's Racing Roundtable. And we obviously had a huge action-packed weekend. I'm joined by Vance Hansen and James Scully as always. Gentlemen, we're going to get into discussing the Preakness Stakes, of course, and we'll start right there. And Vance, I'm going to start with you by asking you, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being no shot at all, 10 being they just needed to put the black-eyed Susans on him, when the incident happened in upper stretch, what did you think of journalism's chances of winning?
Definitely under 5, no question about it. I mean, what a remarkable effort by journalism, taking all those bumps at the head of the stretch and then overcoming that, plus having to deal with a 5-length deficit on a really improving colt named Gosker, who just opened up on the field. And you couldn't have written a better, more dramatic Preakness than that one. We've seen a lot of them over the years. Of course, we all remember a Fleet Alex. That was the addition a lot of us came to our minds when we were watching the stretch run on Saturday. We've had some other great ones too over the years, but this one has entered the pantheon of one of the great Preakness efforts of all time. And as we see this field entering the clubhouse turn, journalism again had a perfectly nice ground-saving trip along the inside. And from there, entering the backstretch into the stretch, it was just a matter of whether Roberto Espoli was going to be able to find some room. Some very aggressive race riding that we saw in the stretch there. We'll touch on that subject a little bit later, but truly a remarkable effort by journalism, back near the top of the 3-year-old standings, like as if he did drop off of it after a second place finish in the Kentucky Derby. But definitely a race we'll remember for the ages.
No question about it. James, I'll pass the baton to you. So this is the point at which Umberto makes a conscious decision to stay inside and save as much ground as possible. In retrospect, we obviously just saw there was an opportunity for him to probably angle out and go around everybody, risky as that is at times. With what he had under him, is that what he should have done?
Yes, I believe it is. I mean, listen, right there was space for him to go between. It wasn't like he ever got him checked or in traffic or he ran into a wall of horses. At that point, the last thing I want to see my jockey do is give up that positioning to me, he had to make that move right past the midway point of the far turn. And I don't want to see him start losing ground. I thought he went for a hole that was there. I had no problem with the ride. I think that journalism is, he's an off the pace type, but he's more effective when he's not too far back early. He's always within 5 lengths of the lead at every point of call in the Preakness. And, he's saving ground the entire way as well. And he never came upon a point in time where Rispoli, to me, had to make a decision to swing around horses. There was a gap for him there in upper to mid stretch, and he went for it, and it closed on him because Goal Oriented came in on him at that point. So I didn't have any problem whatsoever for the ride about the ride. I just thought the trip was much better than his trip in the Derby. It's hard to work out a trip if you're not off the pace type in a 19-horse field sometimes. And I thought, it hurt him a little bit being 10th early in that race. He wanted to be a little bit closer. But on this occasion, I gave him 0 chance when he had that trouble because Vance referenced it. Not only did he get pinned around, and I thought the jockey might wrap him up on him at that point, but Gosker, I think just getting lost, when the Fleet Alex had this amazing recovery 20 years ago, he went on and won that race by open lengths, and crafty CT was an afterthought. I don't think Gosker is going to be an afterthought coming out of the Preakness. I can look at the numbers he ran on paper; they're huge. He got a 111 E2 pace number. He chased hot pet fractions throughout. He opened a 5-length lead in the stretch, and he got nailed in the final jumps. I mean, it was like the top two ran a great race. It was a fantastic addition of the Preakness in my mind.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, the step forward taken by Gosger is pretty incredible. I'm glad that Ramon Dominguez went on to do what he did after that 2005 Preakness, because too many people remembered him because of that ride on Scrappy T. But as far as the goal-oriented conversation goes, and you alluded to it a little bit, I feel pretty strongly about what Flavien Prat did. And I have no issue with it whatsoever. I don't think he was supposed to roll out a red carpet and let journalism have a path inside of him. I also think that Umberto was attempting to create a path that didn't exist. I thought he was wedging his horse between horses, trying to create something there. And Pratt's obligation to his owners, and if he's making a full effort to win the race, which he clearly did, is to hold his position. He had enough horse at that point to hold his position. Once they made contact, I think the scrum sort of ended things, of course, for Clever again, who was on his way out anyway. And at that point, journalism was able to recover quickly enough. And it's that athleticism and that ability that he clearly has that helped him, enabled him really to run down a horse like Gosger, who had such a massive advantage at that point. I thought his trip in the Derby was actually pretty good. I thought the way that race unfolded, he had a pretty clean run from inside to outside coming from off the pace, which in the Derby is largely unheard of. So, at some point in time, my issue with journalism, and I have no issues with journalism, my issue with the way in which he's been ridden is that he's a horse that needs a little bit to get going. He's a typical dirt route grinder, right? You have to get into him a little bit, but he hits his top speed pretty quickly. And once he does, he's able to start gaining on horses very, very quickly. So this is now 2 out of the last 3 times that Umberto has married himself to the rail and gotten this horse into unnecessary trouble. I'd like to see him be a little bit more willing to lose ground and give this horse a free and clear run, because, we saw him make a heck of a move around the far turn in the Derby when he got out into the clear. Do you agree with that, Vance?
Yeah, in some respects I do. And I think those kind of tactics, if he continues to use them, I think he's very lucky that this race is a mile and 3/16 and not a mile and an eighth, because at a mile and an eighth, I don't think he gets up in time. But, in a mile and an eighth race going forward, perhaps the Haskell or maybe some other prep that he runs down the road, he's not going to be able to afford to lose that precious ground that might cost him a victory. Now, races like the Travers and the Breeders' Cup Classic, both at a mile and a quarter, and the Belmont Stakes too, for that matter, I think he's going to be able to continue to save ground and hopefully not get in too much trouble or lose too much ground in the street.
Now, Nick, I would say though, are you saying that like at the on the far turn, if you thought Rispoli should have angled him out and gone around the pack of runners?
I can't take him. I can't be that guy that says that, right? I can't question his decision.
I just didn't think there was an opportunity. I just thought, it's one thing when you come up and you get checked and you got traffic in front of you, but I always thought he was sort of like, going smoothly. And at that point, I really think at that point, one thing about journalism was in all of his preps, or at least his 2 preps this year, he faced extremely short fields.
Right.
And I do think the Derby toughened him up in a sense, and this race is going to help him also, moving forward. Just because, obviously he had trouble in the Santa Anita Derby, and I agree 100%. Rispoli didn't have to have him on the inside where one of the 2 Baffords could be riding against him. But in the Preakness, if he goes around at that point and just loses all the ground in the world and he comes up a little short, he'd be getting I think just would just be like the criticism would be significant because he didn't have to at that point take him around horses, and they were starting to bunch up at that point too, coming off the turn.
Right. I would say, I think, knowing what ended up happening obviously is going to color the way you answer that question, because what happened, could have been very unfortunate. Luckily, it didn't end up being so. I think he could have stayed inside and simply waited and just waited behind those horses, and goal oriented would have either drifted out as he tired, or he would have been able to take the inside path through where Clever again was tiring. So I think forcing the issue the way he did, which was a split-second decision on Umberto's part, put him in a little bit more danger of having something like what ended up happening, whereas he probably could have just waited and ended up getting that seam. Now remember, Umberto's history as a jockey, he spent a lot of time in Hong Kong, he spent a lot of time riding in Europe, and in a lot of those races, you're very packed together before you turn for home, and then horses fan out as they make moves, because the majority of the moves, and this is something Vance can speak to, the majority of the moves are made around the outside with horses rallying from well off of it. That doesn't always happen in dirt racing. Right? In dirt racing, the fields are more compact. They're closer together most of the way around there before there's some separation in the final quarter mile. So what I want to see moving forward is, and I hate to sound so blunt with it, but I want Umberto to ride this horse with more confidence. Right? I want him. I don't want him to feel like he has to cut corners and save ground and do all those things. That yes, it's nice when you can, but it's nice to do when you have to. And I don't really think he has to with this horse. I think this horse has always been the head of the class among 3-year-olds. And even though he lost to Sovereignty in the Derby, I still think he's the best 3-year-old going right now. And I'm hopeful that he's able to prove it in a little over 2 weeks, because that really has the potential to be a heck of a matchup in the Belmont Stakes. Where do you stand on who's the best 3-year-old right now, James?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with your take right now off the Preakness. I'm giving it to journalism, because to me, Sovereignty had a built-in home field advantage at Churchill. He loved that track. Now, I will say that, I mean, if journalism and Sovereignty are head for head turning for home, I don't know. To me, he needs to get the jump on that on a deep closer like that through positioning when he can, sort of like, Tapestry got the jump on Sovereignty in the Florida Derby. But yeah, I just think I think journalism's the better horse moving forward, because Sovereignty still needs to prove it outside of Churchill Downs.
What are you thinking, Vance?
I think it's a very close call between the two of them, and I don't think the gap between the two of them is as large as the Kentucky Derby finish suggested. So it's going to be a very close rematch, I think, in the Belmont Stakes.
I don't generally love to spend too much time worrying about these things or necessarily hypothesizing about what could happen. But has it crossed either of your minds that maybe the wet track could have worked against journalism? I mean, he ran a good race. Speed figure-wise, he was right in line with what he had done before. But maybe a dry surface could be the mitigating thing. Do either of you have a strong thought on that?
Just with that strong, like, off-track pedigree. I mean, granted, it's his first time on an off-track that day. But, yeah, it's tough for me to I think I don't think that was. I'm not putting any weight into that.
Yeah, it's hard to quantify exactly what kind of a difference that track surface made in that race. So the more evidence that we see how those two match up against each other on a fast track, the better it'll be.
No doubt about it. Well, fingers crossed that they meet up in the Belmont Stakes coming up. Don't think there's terribly much to talk about in terms of Preakness also rans, given that we mentioned Gosgar already, who I've seen mentioned as well as a Belmont possibility. And why not, right? I mean, he's a horse that took a massive leap forward. And good to me for Brendan Walsh getting the attention that he deserves, because he's doing an outstanding job, not only in 25, but has for years. So hoping that a number of these end up getting to...
and I will say goal-oriented and clever again. I mean, big difference between fourth and last, but those are still two horses that could be okay coming out of the race as well. You could just make an argument it was too much too soon, perhaps, in a sense, for both of them. And clever again, I mean, he set some really hard fractions up for top, and it was disappointing to see him falter like he did. But that could be a footnote to his career if he bounces back well.
I saw Steve Asmussen mention that he might be headed to the turf, which was something he also actually said about Tistastic after the Derby. And, Steve's won 10,000 plus races, not really ever been known for being much of a turf trainer. But if Steve has that idea, then we'll have to see where he ends up surfacing. Vance, was there anything else from Pimlico on Saturday that caught your eye?
Yeah, the Jim McKay turf sprint on the undercard. Whitty, who was not correctly morning line priced, I think, at 10-1. I think he wound up going off at 5-2. But as you can see here, he breaks last in this 5 furlong sprint, and really down the backside, he falls so far behind, 10, 12 lengths at least, that you're wondering, is this is he going to even make an impact at the end? But boy, did he turn in a fantastic rally in this race. He had been second in the Jim McKay Turf Sprint last year on a really boggy turf course. It wasn't so boggy this year, but after Friday's torrential downpour, still had some give in it. But as you can see here, turning for home, Whitty, the gray coming from behind here, the sibling to Caravel, is going to thread his way between the field, and he just motors home. I haven't seen this in a turf sprint in a long time. Horse coming from this far back and just charging and then winning for fun at the end. I mean, this was just a beautiful sight. So nothing but encouragement going forward for Woody here. I did read some comments from her trainer, his trainer, Elizabeth Merriman, earlier this week that, she really thinks he likes soft turf, and going forward into the summer and fall races, the chances of the better the chance of him catching a turf course less than firm, the better opportunity he has to win. So those can be few and far between, especially if we get a dry summer on the eastern seaboard. But sometimes they do keep turf sprints on the grass after it's rained, and his opportunities for winning more stakes, I think, will come. They might not be consistent, but they will come.
Elizabeth Merriman mentioned both the Highlander at Woodbine and the Get Serious at Monmouth as potential next spots. I would imagine the race like the Troy, perhaps at Saratoga coming up in August, could be on the agenda as well. But yeah, nice looking horse. You're absolutely right. You don't see a horse come from that far back and win by that much in a 5 furlong turf sprint, especially when the pace didn't collapse, right? I mean, he basically just went out and got him.
He did. And you mentioned the Highlander. I think that's a race he ran in last year at Woodbine, going 6 furlongs, and he finished distant second. But if the pace suits and the course conditions suit, watch out for him to rebound.
One thing we know is he will not be catching any soft turf this fall in the Breeders' Cup, so he might need to stay in training for 26 and see where it ends up. James, what about something else from Pimlico for you on Saturday?
I'll mention Candy's win on Friday in the Laird DuPont distaff. Really, to me, that really important race for this filly, because let's face it, this is a older filly mare dirt division that is in need of some horses to come on. Got Torpedo Anna on the sidelines now. McPeak is going to give her at least a couple months off, and we'll see. Well, I mean, it'd be great to see her return well, but it's not going to be a given. And, I think Gin, she's going to go to Ogden Phipps, who upset Candy in her comebacker in the Double Dog Dare. But Candy was a juvenile Grade 1 winner. She won the Alcibiades in her second start, or third start, excuse me. And then went and had not won another stake of merit. Her only other stakes win came over 3 overmatched rivals in the Ladies' Secret at Monmouth last year. That was more of like a glorified allowance. So to me, this was a big and important thing. It wasn't the prettiest race. She got on the wrong lead. She was all over the track. But at the same time, she wasn't tiring late. She was drawing off from the competition. She wins the race by 3 lengths. And she's got a chance to be a major player in this division this summer and going into the fall. But we'll see if Candy can keep building upon her first win in a while since last year in early June.
Yeah, really unlucky loser of last year's Alabama as well. So a filly that had a good 3-year-old campaign wasn't probably what they thought when things got started. I still marvel every time I look at her past performances at how much she got bet in last year's Ashland. And maybe that's my acknowledgement that I got the morning line wrong in that race. But she took a ton of money off the layoff, having run well at Keeneland as a 2-year-old. So one of those things that just always comes to mind. But I agree with you. It's almost like maybe a side door entry back into the top of that division. But I think all of us knew coming down the stretch of the La Troyenne that this division is going to need a new batch of horses. Also saw that Bob Baffert is giving Cavalieri off until the Delmar meet. She'll probably resurface in the Clement Hirsch, but she's been a very talented filly out west. So we'll see Candied likely surface in a graded stake race again very soon, maybe even 22 days after her last win or 21 days, I should say, in the Ogden Phipps, which is on Friday.
That's what Fletcher said after the race, which is a little bit unusual, but she would definitely add some intrigue to that race in a rematch against Jin.
There's only 4 grade 1s pre Breeders' Cup, pre Spinster in that division. So you miss one, you've got to wait a while for another. I'm actually going to bring up a Todd Pletcher horse as well, just in my what else at Pimlico very briefly. In Crudo, who won the Sir Barton on Saturday, was a race that didn't quite come up as fast speed figure wise as I thought it would, especially visually watching him pull away from this field. You see the horse that he's leaving behind very easily here was Invictus, who went off the 1-2 favorite. That's the son of Serengeti Empress, who had been such an impressive winner second out at Keeneland and was bet down to heavy favoritism here. And Crudo handled him very, very easily. This was a performance that really made him look worthy of that hefty price tag, and part of why we saw him get bet so heavily on debut at Gulfstream and then ultimately break his maiden at Keeneland. I imagine this is a horse who's going to see a much tougher objective in his next start. We'll see if maybe they get a run into him before a race like the Haskell potentially or the Jim Dandy. But Crudo is one I think you definitely want to keep your eye on moving forward for sure. We'll see where he ends up next, but obviously a horse with a great deal of potential. James, I think you wanted to touch on a couple of fleet-footed sprinting types from the weekend.
Yeah, and I'll just say about Crudo, I was surprised as well, Nick. I mean, that was one race that I thought he looked awesome. I thought he was visually impressive, and I liked how he just took it to him. His first 2 races didn't come back very fast, or his last race didn't come back very fast. I thought it was one of the softer maiden races at Keeneland, but he went and trained and worked a bunch of bullets in preparation. I thought he took a big step forward off the Sir Barton. He'll have bigger targets this summer, like he said, but he's a progressing type. I thought Steve Asmussen really flexed his muscles on Saturday with his top 2 older dirt sprinters. Sent out, Booth in the Grade 3 Maryland. And he led wire to wire. I think that's the 4th consecutive win, 3rd straight graded win, and just really put his speed on display, just out sprinted him at the break. This is a big horse for Eric Asmussen, Steve's son. His first graded win came aboard this horse in the Whitmore back in March. And, this is a talented type of horse. So he's serving as a regular rider. So he's not a threat, to be replaced anytime soon. So kudos to Eric for, good trip, good mount. The other one is Zeitlos. She came in the Skip-At Stakes. And I thought really that was her first race since a 7th in the Philly Mare Sprint. And really just looked the part. She's now won 8 of her last 9 starts from 5.5 to 6.5 furlongs. She's a late running sprinter, but wasn't too far back in the early stages of this and won pretty handily. Her big issue is the Philly Mare Sprint this fall is 7 furlongs. Zeitlos is over 2 at 7 furlongs, and she actually ran a 1-turn mile and got beat there as well. So yet to win past 6.5. She'll definitely get another shot at 7 this summer, but definitely came back in good form for Asmussen on Saturday.
The Asmussen camp might be pulling for Copian to stretch out in distance as well. That might be the biggest problem with the 7 furlong Breeders' Cup Philly and Mare Sprint, at least at that point. And I have to comment, I've not really seen many jockeys look as happy riding a horse as Eric does riding Booth. I mean, he was grinning pretty ear the final 16th mile of that race. So fun to see. And I know Steve gets a lot of enjoyment out of seeing his sons ride. I mean, you can see that in the picture there. It's always nice. Even horse players like us are allowed to smile every once in a while. Vance, what else did caught your eye over the weekend at Pimlico? I'm sorry, what is your what else period?
Well, I need to address, the Preakness and the Pimlico, which is always in the news. The race itself has had some lean years in the last few years, as we know. The Derby winner has skipped the Preakness a couple of times in recent years, including this past Saturday. It hasn't been getting the depth that it used to when trainers and owners weren't unwilling to wheel back their horses on 2 weeks rest. And so there's been it's been going on for 20, 25 years at the very least, but now the talk has really ramped up in recent years about stretching the Triple Crown out, putting the Preakness back another week or 2. But, when you look at the bottom line on the financials, this was an amazingly successful Preakness weekend. Now, granted, they had some bad weather on Friday. It cost them probably a better day on Friday with the cancellation of the last race, but The business on Friday was about level from last year, and on Saturday it was a huge improvement over last year. They had great weather all day long. Now, granted, the races weren't as competitive as they could have been. There was a lot of short priced winners throughout the weekend, especially on Saturday's card. So a lot of lopsided races, but still bettors came out and bet more than $110 million on this card. And when at the end of this year, that's going to be probably the fourth most handled racing day of the year. Behind the Kentucky Derby, but probably behind the Belmont and certainly behind the Breeders' Cup Saturday card. So when people talk about moving the Preakness back a week or two, you're really messing with the possibility that you're going to, literally make a very negative impact on what is one of the top four betting cards of the year. Now, when people say they want to push the Preakness back 1 or 2 weeks, just to get a better field, you're not only affecting the Preakness, but you're also affecting the undercard and people's bettors' availability to bet on this card. If you push it back a week, you're always talking about Memorial Day weekend, and Memorial Day weekend used to be a big deal in horse racing, but it really hasn't been for a long time, and it's almost become an afterthought. Especially since the Met Mile isn't run on Memorial Day anymore. So not only are you interfering with the beginning of people's 3-day holiday, are you going to get that same kind of attention of Preakness on Memorial Day Saturday than you do now on the third Saturday, May? Not necessarily. If you push it back 2 more weeks into the beginning of June, which is closer to the Belmont's traditional date, then you're talking about people's, paying attention to graduations and other social activities. So, as much as we lament that the Preakness hasn't been getting as deep of fields as we saw on Saturday, throws up a lot of dramatics. It's still a huge betting card, $110 million. As I said, it's a top 5 betting day. I think people have to really think about the exterior factors if they want to really move this back a week or two going forward.
I totally agree. Couldn't have said it better myself. And I've opined on this quite a few times, drawn the ire of plenty, and that has never stopped me before and won't stop me in the future. Glad that we're in the same camp on that, Vance. The other thing that I would throw into that part of the conversation is the idea that a week or two is going to increase participation completely and totally belies the trends that we've seen for years, which is that these trainers are going to be far more comfortable to wait 8 weeks for a Belmont than to run back 4 weeks in the Preakness. So, it's just facts. I ran some data yesterday on the 9 trainers that have won Triple Crown races in the last 5 years that have 200 starts or more on a yearly basis, and they run their horses between 29 and 56 days 3 times as often in graded stakes on dirt as they do in 1 to 28 days. They're 3 times more likely to give those horses the extra 4 weeks. So, it's a potentially very, very risky solution to a problem that at the end of the day, I think is way overblown in terms of how serious it is. The game has a lot of issues. One of the things that actually works is the Triple Crown, and it's one of the last things that we need to start fooling around with. So I am firmly in that camp as well. James, anything you want to throw in to the Triple Crown conversation? If you disagree with Vance and I, get ready.
No, I agree. And listen, as somebody who loves horse racing, I mean, we're all like a big time followers of the industry. There are people out there in the industry that hate the Preakness, and not only hate it, but they badmouth it, and they talk about how terrible the product is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Even like on Saturday, journalism wins, and there's people criticizing the horses he beat, and I just don't get it. I think that this is, they have every financial incentive. It's not going to make any difference adding a week to it. And these tracks are going to lose a ton of money if they start messing with the dates of the Triple Crown. It's one of the biggest 4 days in racing business wise, and it should be celebrated, not criticized by people who love horse racing. And I thought that, obviously, I think a big part of it is the fact that since Justify, you can look at the list of winners, War of Will, Swiss Skydiver, especially these recent years with Rombauer, National Treasure, and others, Seize the Gray. But I think that this was a great addition this year, and it was a return to, its past glory, where it not only got journalism, but some other good horses and made for a good race. And, I'm a supporter of the Preakness and will be moving forward every year.
Yeah, totally agree. And of course, I mean, the game has an obligation to support the citizens of Maryland that are obviously putting money into a rebuilt Pimlico, which we'll see in a couple of years, with next year's edition slated to be run at Laurel. Well, that's going to do
Wait
it.
till we see what the handle is then. I think in 2027, they got a shot at a record because that's going to be a big time event.
Oh, sure. No, it's going to be huge. I mean, this is still an important. I mean, this is a very important day, as Van says, a very important race. And anybody who loses sight of it, I was a little surprised at the numbers, pulling the handle stats for the 3 Triple Crown races, the Breeders' Cup Classic, and the Travers last year. And I mean, the Preakness handled 3 times what the Breeders' Cup Classic did. So that was
it does like it. I mean, it does 35 million more than Breeders' Cup Friday.
Correct.
I mean, and it's like more than double the Travers or Florida Derby or any other big day of the year, Whitney Day or any other day. So there's just no comparing those days to the Preakness Day for what it means to the bottom line of the industry.
I totally agree. Well, you know what? That's going to do it for us. This has been another edition of the Racing Roundtable. The guys will be back later in the week to handicap a bit on the twinspires jury. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. I thought we had a great conversation about the Preakness and everything beyond. I'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Nick.
For Vance and James, that's it.
When it comes to horse racing, you can never have too much information. With twinspires, you can place your bets with confidence. Whether you use handicapping insights like our Brisnet speed ratings, prime power and past performances, the guidance of our experts' top picks, or just choose a name that catches your eye. Yes! No matter how you pick your horse, bet with twinspires. And now you can race to victory with twinspires tournaments.